Because we know it is there, danger in an obvious place, on a battlefield, say, is often far less of a threat than it is on a quiet street in a small town. For example, on a street deep in America where 3 little boys rode interlocking figure eights on their bicycles, and on a sweet May evening, too, any danger would be a surprise, and a great and terrible danger impossible. Not all of the boys were in danger. In fact, 2 of them were as profoundly safe as anybody else in Madison, Wisconsin on the scented evening of May 21st, 1977. The 3rd boy, however, was not so lucky. Because of something buried deeply in his genes, he was of more than normal interest to someone that is supposed not to exist, but does exist. In fact, is master of this earth. It was too bad for this child, in fact tragic, because these creatures, if they could even be called that, caused phenomenal trauma, scarring trauma, to those of their victims who lived. Play ended with the last of the sun, and lights glowed on the porches of Woody Lane, as one by one the boys of the lane retired. Danny rode a little longer, and was watched by Burley, the dog of Mr. Amer. Soon Mr. Amer himself came across his lawn. His pipe glowed as he drew on it, and he said, "Say there, Danny, you want to come night fishing with me and your Uncle Frank? We've been getting some good 'uns all this week." Danny was a lonely child, saddled with an alcoholic mother and a violent father, so he welcomed these chances to be away from the tensions of home, but not tonight. "I got scouts real early," he said. "Gotta get up." Mr. Amer leaned back on his heels. "We get a sturgeon, we'll name 'em for you." He left Danny to go down the dark of Woody Lane alone, pushing the pedals of his Raleigh as hard as he could. As he parked his bike and ran up to the lit back door, he was flooded with relief as he hopped on the doorstep and went into the lighted kitchen. He smelled the lingering odor of fried chicken, felt hungry, but knew there was none left in the house. He went into the living room. He didn't stay long. Love Boat was like a religion with Mom and Dad, and then came Fantasy Island. He'd rather be in his room with the Batman he'd bought from Ron Bloom for 20 cents. As Saturday evening ended, the moon rode over houses that one by one became dark. Sometime after 3, Danny Callahan became aware of a change around him. He opened his eyes and saw nothing but stars. For a moment he thought he'd gone night fishing after all. Then he realized he was still in bed, and the stars were coming from his own home planetarium, bought from Edmund Scientific for $9. He hadn't turned the planetarium on, though, and that fact made the acid of fear rise in his throat. He opened his mouth to call for his dad, but there was no sound. Dan sat up on the bedside. A thought whispered to him, "Stand up. Look out the window." He saw it sliding open. Then he went faster and moved through it. Then he was moving through the limbs of the oak that stood in their front yard, struggling and grabbing at them. He got his arms around one, but his body turned upward until his feet were pointing at the sky. He held on with all his might, but the pull got stronger and stronger. Far below him, moonlight danced on Lake Monona's baby waves. And then he was among the night clouds, and he flew in their canyons and soared across their hills and heard their baby thunder muttering. He closed his eyes and covered his face with his hands as he moved up toward what looked like a silver island in the sky. The island had a round opening in it, dark and black. Then Danny was through the round opening. He stopped in the air, then fell to a floor. Opening his eyes, he found himself in darkness, but not absolute darkness. Moonlight sifted in the opening. A cold sorrow enveloped him. Now, here, he remembered this from before. He thought of jumping back out through the opening, but what would happen then? He went closer to it, leaned out as far as he dared. "Mr. Amers! Uncle Frank! Help me! Please, Uncle Frank!" A rustling sound. He cringed closer to the edge, wishing he dared jump through. A voice whispered soft, "Hello?" He could see white, a white face, loose white clothes. "Help me," the form said. It was a girl. He could see that now, could hear it in her voice. "Are you from Madison?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm Danny Callahan. I'm Caitlin Burns. I never saw anybody else here before." "Me neither. Where are we?" "I'm not sure. 'Cause when I come here, I remember I was here before, but then when I go home, I don't remember anymore." She lowered her head. "They do stuff to me that's weird. Some kind of operations." Her eyes flashed. "Yes, but this isn't a hospital.